Good evening, everyone. How is everybody doing?
Yeah, all doing great. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Happy Friday.
We wish you likewise.
Friday too, Doc.
Alrighty.
Hello,
So
Doc. Hello.
yes. Anthony, how are you doing?
Well, thank you, sir.
So tonight we have a very interesting discussion, and I think everybody is really going to benefit from this. If you are trying to break into the cybersecurity space, GRC space, you would have run into this. And when you do go to interviews, and you are definitely going to run into, frameworks. So what exactly are these frameworks? What do you really need to know about them? Whether you're a beginner or even if you are in the industry already, it's always good to have some refresher to go over some of these frameworks. So we are going to look at, I think, our top 15 and that is based on frameworks that are the most listed frameworks when it comes to jobs on different job boards around, and then also the very common ones that we use in the industry, right? So we are going to jump in. There's a little bit much of discussion to for us tonight, so we are not going to be doing our usual cyber news for the week. But if you have anything that is newsworthy, you can kindly raise your virtual hand and let us know. And then also, if you are joining us, you can put in the chat hashtag Team Live and also let us know where you're joining us from. We will give you some shout out when there is time at the end of the program. And for those who are looking to renew their certification, they can put hashtag Team Live in the chat. You take a screenshot of that and you can use that to renew your CompTIA Security Plus, Security Analyst, and other certifications as well. Right. So you are all very much welcome. This is Eretmis Cyber Chat. We do this every Friday night, 7 p.m. Eastern. And like I always say, it's Friday night. You chose to be here with us. And we are going to give you something for your toolbox. The hour and a half or so that you're going to spend with us is not going to be wasted. You're always going to learn something new. And it's always good to be in the community of like-minded cybersecurity professionals and aspiring cybersecurity professionals. This is how you grow and this is how you network as well. So a little bit about myself. If you are joining us for the first time, I'm Dr. Emmanuel Edu. I'm the CEO of Eretmis Inc. We are a cybersecurity consulting firm based out of New York. We are a PCI QSA company. We do different types of contracts in the cybersecurity space. I'm also the founder of Eretmis Academy. Eretmis Academy is a cybersecurity training institute. We train cybersecurity professionals at different levels: entry level, intermediate level, advanced level, and also a former professor of University of Maryland Global Campus and CTC as well, and a former United States Army captain and a member of the Force Technology Council as well. Now, CompTIA, we are partners with CompTIA. We are authorized partners, and what that means is that we have 20% discount for anybody on here who wants to risk it for if you want to write any of the CompTIA certifications. If you reach out to us, we will show you how to get a 20% discount on your voucher, right? And it's for our community members and also for folks who join us on Cyber Chat every Friday night. And for those who have taken Security Plus, Security Analyst, and other certifications, CISSP, CISA, you have to renew these certifications. Or so there are two ways to renew, either to resit for the exam, or you are going to use continuing education points, right, to be able to renew. So if you are here every 45 minutes, tonight counts as one CEU or CPE that you can use to renew a certification. And that is what I was talking about earlier. You put in the chat hashtag Team Live, and you can put today's date on there as well. You take a screenshot of it and you'll be able to use that to renew your certification. And also we have a WhatsApp group for Eretmis Cyber Chat. So the link is going to be posted. You'll be able to use that to join us, to be on the platform and in order not to miss anything that is going on in the Eretmis community. Now, tonight, we are going to be looking at the top GRC frameworks that employers are looking at or they expect you to know. If you want to work in the GRC space or you're already working in the GRC space, And some of the mini topics that we are going to be looking at is the definition of the frameworks, what they are, why they matter, the top ones that employers are looking for or expecting candidates to know about or to have used, and the difference between the frameworks. And then we're also going to look at how to, during interviews, what exactly are employers looking for, right? During your interviews, what are they going to be asking you? And then also based on your role, how do you connect your role to which frameworks you have to you have to familiarize yourself with, or you have to know how to use, right? So with that, we are going to look at our upcoming courses. So for GRC workshop and internship, we are going to start on the 27th. It was tentatively on the 20th, but now it's going to be for sure on the 27th. And then our AI governance is also going to be on the 29th. Cloud security is going to be on the 30th. Our 7-day challenge is the 23rd. And then we have our PCI, or our payment security, is also going to be on our payment security is going to be on the 16th. And then our our GRC arena interview prep sessions every Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern. Now, this is our GRC and cyber arena. We call it the arena. This is where we put you in the hot seat. We take you through different interview questions, and we give you real feedback. So if you are looking to practice more on your interviews, the best time to practice on your interviews is not when you have an interview coming up, is before you even have an interview coming up. And for folks who are looking to break into the cybersecurity space, if you are totally new to IT, it doesn't matter. If you want to break into GRC, cybersecurity, I think I saw in one of our chats, somebody was like, no, I don't like cybersecurity. I want to do GRC. I'm like, that is interesting. Because GRC falls under cybersecurity, right? Is under the bigger umbrella of cybersecurity or information security, right? So if you want to do either or, this is the right program for you. It will help you to become a cybersecurity professional from start to finish, and you become a very good one at that with a lot of hands-on experience under your belt. Also for folks who've gone through some training elsewhere, you have a degree, you have a master's, but you've never really worked on any cybersecurity projects, right? During interviews, you can't speak to any single project that you worked on. You are just trying to speak from theory. Then this is the program for you, the GRC workshop and internship. This is the program that affords you the opportunity to work on real-world cybersecurity projects for 2 of our sister companies. And during this time, we teach and mentor you on how to do these projects, and you actually do the projects. So you are going to learn by doing, right? So you are going to be actually doing, and this is exactly what you're going to be doing on the job for most of the jobs that you're going to get after this. And once you're done with this, you can literally do almost, all the different roles on the defensive side of security, right? So if you've done some training, if you have a bachelor's degree, a master's in cybersecurity, and you've not actually worked on any project, and working on projects is not just using Nexus or Qualys or any of these tools. Yes, if you know how to use the tool, is good. What project did you use that tool to do, right? And how can you do the same project without that tool? That is, where we are getting into your actual job, not just using a tool. So if you don't have that hands-on experience, real-world experience, this is the program for you, right? And this is the program that makes everyone who goes through Eretmis a rockstar on the job. And then also for folks already in the security space, or if you've been in IT for a while and you want to pivot into the security space, I also encourage you to look at the program. This is also vendor neutral and very hands-on. So we cut across AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, and it's very hands-on. So you are going to come out of this knowing how to defend the cloud environment, because almost every organization has some assets in the cloud world. And AI governance, I cannot stress on this enough. AI is here to stay, and AI governance is a career path and a career option that is gradually taking off. Or maybe it's probably in air, but not, maybe for 40,000 feet up in the air yet, right? So it is a good opportunity for you to catch on before it is all the way up in the air. And what do I mean? AI is here to stay. Different organizations are now struggling to find AI governance professionals. So these are people who really understand AI governance, or looking at GRC from the perspective of AI. Is not the same thing that we do, although similar things, and you're going to do a little bit more. But this is the program that is going to help you polish up when it comes to AI governance. And for cybersecurity professionals, already on the job, this is gradually going to become either they are going to target along your role before they find somebody to do this full time, right? So it is going to only make you more valuable if you jump onto this. And this is also very hands-on. You are going to work on different projects, and we take you from scratch. So if you don't have any clue what AI is, that is fine. You will still be able to go through this, because we are going to start everything from scratch, right? So, and then we move into our payment security compliance. So for folks looking to break into the 200Ks in the cybersecurity space, if you're already in the cybersecurity role, you want to break into the 200 plus, this is the program for you. This is a niche within the GRC space or cybersecurity, and the one that is going to make you a boss within the organization, because you are going to be the subject matter expert. Most of the times, you're going to find yourself as the only PCI or the PCI compliance programs manager, right? So you call the shots and you run the whole entire PCI program. So if you're looking to specialize in the most lucrative, arguably the most lucrative niche in the cybersecurity space, this is it right here, right? So we are going to post the link for our WhatsApp group for the cyber chat, and we are jumping into tonight's topic, right? So before we jump into our discussion, I just want to pick everybody's brain on this. Frameworks, you probably have heard about frameworks, or you've used maybe one or two. What is your take on frameworks? What is a cybersecurity or GRC framework? And you can raise your virtual hand and let us know what your thoughts are. What is your understanding of a cybersecurity framework? Anyone? I know there are a lot of folks on here that I can see who can answer this or give their take. So what is a framework? The only wrong answer is the one that you don't, give.
Can I say it's a guide?
Okay, so go ahead, Andy. Andy says a guide.
It's a guide within the industry where it's like a guideline within which you do things in protecting your data processes and your people.
Okay,
Yes.
that is a good start. Anybody else? I think Idris put in there that it was guideline, right? Anybody else?
Rules or blueprints.
Okay, rules or blueprint or rules. Okay,
Yes.
and what are those rules and blueprints used for? Are they not, back to the same person, but are they just like any rules, any blueprints that we use elsewhere? George, please go ahead.
I think these are like best practices that can be used within the cybersecurity field.
Okay. Yes. Anybody else? George?
Yeah, good evening, Doc, and good evening, everyone on here. I would say frameworks are a set of guidelines, best practices, and controls that help us to manage cybersecurity risk in the ecosystem. That's what I would say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Chucks, please go ahead.
Thank you, Doc. I would say a framework is a recognized set of rules, policies, and technical protocols that an organization usually will follow to manage risks and also protect their data.
Okay. Yes. Great. Ola, please go ahead.
So I would say it's a guideline and the best practices that organizations uses majorly to help them reduce their risk.
Okay. Thank you. Anthony, please go ahead.
Yeah, hello, Doctor. I'll say framework is a structured set of documented standard policy and also a blueprint used by organization to manage and reduce risk and also mitigate risk.
Okay. Thank you. Idris, you give your take and we will move on.
Yeah, I would say that framework is a guideline or especially like a requirement that is put out there by like organization like NIST or government that any organization or any like DoD government can use for best practice to secure their system.
Okay, thank you. So now with that, at least we've started with the kind of definition and what really frameworks are. Now also on the other hand, maybe what is the most confusing part of frameworks to you? I mean, this can be, you can be even within the industry, you can still have some confusions about some frameworks in terms of what exactly are they, are they the same, one of the same, or what is the biggest confusion that you have, or the biggest question, or not even the biggest, like what questions do you have about frameworks? This can be anybody and everybody. We will take that down, and as we are moving along, we will try to answer those questions. But what are some of the confusions that you have, especially if you are new and you're trying to break into cybersecurity? What are some of the, maybe myths or questions that you might have about frameworks? There are some questions and some confusions about frameworks. All house, Idris, please go ahead if your hand is up. Because, mostly in cybersecurity and in IT and in other industries, we tend to just accept things as they are and we just move on. We don't ask questions and we just use it and just throw around the big words or, like jargons like, yeah, frameworks and this and that. But really, have you taken time to ask yourself, what exactly are these frameworks and who even makes them? Right. So I think Idris, your hand is back down. Any confusions on frameworks?
Yes, I have a question.
Yes, go ahead, Sydney.
Yeah, I would like to know, how do you know a framework that's applied to your system? How do you know, like, for this specific system, which this framework should be applied to my system?
Okay. So how do you know which framework applies to your system or your organization?
Yeah, organization. Sorry, organization, yes.
Okay. That is a good one. So keep that up. And I think, Sydney, please go ahead. What is your question about frameworks also as well?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
I would say frameworks are like, standards, or should I say a certain level of standards which were put together by, or should I say created by, the custodians of various industries, to my understanding. Say, for instance, the PCI Council were the ones behind the creation of the PCI DSS standard as we know it today. Then the same goes for other industries like the SOC 2, which was created for software companies, SaaS companies, and those in the field of cloud, software delivery services and all that. Yeah, I
Okay.
think, yeah. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. Anthony, please go ahead. What is your question
Thank
about
you.
frameworks?
Thank you. The question or confusion about framework, as far as I'm concerned, I feel somehow organization struggle to quantify the return on investment. So if framework is being implemented, how does it how do we quantify the benefits, or how do we quantify it?
Okay. So how do we quantify the benefits? So what is the return on investment for frameworks?
Yeah.
Okay. George, please go ahead.
Yeah, Doc, I want to ask this question. In real world GRC rules, how often do professionals work with multiple frameworks simultaneously? How often
Okay.
does that?
So how often
How often does security professionals work with frameworks simultaneously?
okay. So that is also a good one. And we are going to answer all these questions when at least we get some leg room in terms of the presentation that we are going to go through, right? So all these are really great questions that we are going to be addressing. And Joan, please go ahead. What is your question also?
There's a conception that frameworks are just a piece of softwares that are implemented. Is it actually true, or frameworks are more than that?
Okay. So also a good question that we are going to be answering as we move along. Anybody else before we jump in? So this topic, like I said from the beginning, a very interesting one, and everybody is going to really benefit from this. Whether you are totally new to cybersecurity, today is your very first day of even thinking about doing cybersecurity. It is good that at least you get exposed to this because you're going to run into it anywhere you go in cybersecurity, right? So let's jump in now. We are going to start with kind of an overview. So most people who want to enter cybersecurity or GRC or even do AI governance or cloud security audits and others, there is a talk about frameworks, but most people don't really know exactly. Even for those who know some of the frameworks, at least they just know them. Okay, there's PCI, there's HIPAA, there's this, there's that. But really, what is the main categorization of these frameworks and why do we have them? Like, I think somebody was asking, what is the return on investment for even wasting our time following these frameworks or even using them for anything, right? And we are going to get to know all these as we move along. So frameworks, we are going to look at the definition, but before that, they are the backbone, or frameworks starts everything off for us in cybersecurity. So in real world cybersecurity GRC work frameworks, they start everything off, and you are going to know why they start everything off, right? So they kind of they help us to, or they are really the backbone. That is the right word in terms of everything that we do. So in terms of helping organizations to manage their risks, helping them to stay in compliance with some rules and regulations, helping them to build policies, procedures, right, putting in place the right controls to help mitigate, attackers trying to breach your network, and a whole host of other things, right? How to assess the risks of third parties that you are going to work in with and all that. So there's a lot of things that we do with our frameworks there are a lot of significance to frameworks that we use, but we have to really understand how and where, and like the 5 Ws, who, when, how, who, when, what, and the remainder of the 5 Ws, right? So what are frameworks? Now, we started with a definition of what frameworks are, or kind of trying to break it down. So there are different explanations in terms of they are guidelines, they are a set of rules, they are a set of controls that we use. There's a whole list of them. Now, frameworks, actually, if you've not taken time to look into what really cybersecurity frameworks or information security frameworks are, and this includes ones that we've designated specifically or we will label specifically as GRC frameworks, or even risk assessment frameworks, right? Is a structured guide that helps organizations to manage cybersecurity risks, right? So cybersecurity risks, cybersecurity maturity, all of that bundled in one. Because everything that we are doing in cybersecurity or information security, there is only one goal for everybody in information security. The goal is one, and the one goal is to reduce risks or mitigate risks to an acceptable level. So whether you are working on the defensive side, offensive side, blue team, purple team, red team, whatever team you might be on, we all have one goal, one overall goal. And the overall goal is to help mitigate risks or help reduce risks to an acceptable level, right? And that is the big business goal. Because if we don't do that, it is going to have an impact on business objective of, making more money, functioning, and business operations going as it's supposed to be. But if there is a breach, there is any issues and problems with our IT infrastructure, IT systems, then the business is not going anywhere. One, they are going to get sued, and there's going to be fines, so you're also going to lose your goodwill. And there's a whole lot of attackers who, probably will hijack your data and ask you to pay money, ransoms or ransomware attacks and others. There's a whole list of things that can go wrong, right? If we play around with information security or cybersecurity within the organization. So the overall goal is to, be able to manage that risk, and frameworks, they help us to do that. Framework, we cannot do anything you cannot do anything in your organization if it's not being backed by, some of these frameworks, right? So then we go back to that, everything in cybersecurity starts with governance. But your governance documentations are also implemented, or your governance strategy are influenced by frameworks, right? So your policies, your procedures, your standards, your guidelines, your baselines within your organization, that forms your governance structure. All that is influenced by frameworks, right? So now we are going to move into what exactly these frameworks are and who makes the frameworks. So we've established frameworks are a structured guide that helps, organizations to be able to manage cybersecurity risks or information security risks, right? And frameworks will contain, or they normally come with, some principles, some, categories, control objectives, control requirements, best practices. So there are some folks who are talking about best practices, right? And these all, if you hear best practices in the cybersecurity space, you can get the best practices from frameworks, right? Now, then we move into the space of frameworks and standards. So now I'm going to make it a little bit more confusing for everybody. So frameworks and standards, are they the same, or there are differences between them? And that is why I'm saying this is a good discussion for everybody, whether you are new or you're already in the industry. So frameworks, they tell organizations which areas to think about in terms of how to also structure their cybersecurity programs. How to manage their whole entire cybersecurity setup. But what about standards? Because some frameworks are some standards are being classified as frameworks. And we kind of, in the industry, we kind of put everything standard frameworks all into frameworks. But what really is the difference between a standard and a framework? Anyone? Or maybe probably you just heard of frameworks, but standards, not so much. But for example, when you take PCI DSS, the actual name is Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard. It's not Data Security Framework. So it's a standard, but we call it a framework. So what really is the difference between a standard and a framework?
Can I say standard is the minimum requirement and the framework is the the environment within which you have to operate, or sort of like the box within which you have to operate to be safe or to be compliant.
Okay, good start. Anybody else? Difference between a framework and a standard? Or let's just make it simple. You can list maybe one or two frameworks that you know, and then you can list one or two standards that you know. So for standards, I just listed PCI because the PCI SSC actually labels it standard, right? So PCI DSS, they label it as a standard. So the official name is a standard, right?
So for mine, I can say the framework is a NIST.
NIST. Okay, which of the NIST? NIST has a lot of standards or frameworks. So which of those are we referring to? Well, let me give you like a very easy giveaway. I mean, and now we are going with official names. NIST Cybersecurity Framework, the actual official name is a framework, right? So that is an easy one. Anybody else? Chucks, please go ahead.
Thank you. So a framework is really a set of best practices and recommendations that organizations can adopt or customize based on their organization's size and risk profile. And an example of that would be like a NIST CSF. And then a standard is basically a strict, audible set of requirements that can be fully implemented to receive an official certification from a third-party auditor.
Okay.
An example of that would be ISO 27001.
So ISO is a standard or a framework?
It's a standard because you're getting a certification for it.
Okay. Okay. Sydney, please go ahead.
Okay. Just from the definition you gave, the slide you showed, a framework is a structured guideline, while a standard is like a benchmark, which, an organization within a definite industry should uphold. Thanks you.
Okay. Thank you. So we are really going to break it down and and then you also, PK, please go ahead.
All right, Dr. Du. So as the framework is the umbrella, say, regulation that covers everything, and the standard is the step-by-step means of implementing that framework.
Okay. Thank you, PK. So before we get into frameworks and standards, in cybersecurity, most folks who will say, I want to get into GRC, not cybersecurity. And, in a funny way, the GRC, the G in GRC stands for what? Governance. And that is where the whole entire story begins. Because you can't do anything without governance. Everything starts with governance. In cybersecurity and elsewhere, even in your company, business-wise, everything in the company starts with governance. Without the rules, regulations, standards, procedures, you can't do anything, right? Even for how much we're going to pay somebody, how all of that has to be put on paper, right? There has to be some policy, something guiding that, right? Either than that, then anybody and everybody can do whatever they want. And same thing applies in the cybersecurity space. So within the structures of your cybersecurity governance in your organization, there's a hierarchy of documentation that we work with. And on the top is your policies, your standards, you come to your procedures, or sometimes your SOPs, and then from there you go to your guidelines, you go to your baseline, right, in that order. Now, those standards, they are different from the standards. They are different in terms of they are internal to the company. So a standard that a company comes up with only applies to that company. Nobody cares about that standard. Same way, like a policy a company comes up with, the policy is only it only affects your company. You cannot, enforce your policy in somebody else's company. It's not going to work that way, right? So a policy in Amazon only is for Amazon. You cannot take that and say, well, we're going to, force that onto Walmart. It's not going to work, right? So we have internal governance structures that is within the organization. So that way we don't get ourselves confused for folks who probably are in the GRC workshop and internship. So you really understand the internal structures well and others. So the standards internally within your organization or the policies and others. I said or, that doesn't mean standards and policies are the same thing, right? When we are discussing governance, we have to choose our words carefully because you cannot say a policy is a standard and a standard is a guideline because they all mean different things, right? So your policy, your standards, your everything that you have internally for your governance documentation, it only applies to your company. Now, when we go outside your company, there are standards and there are what we call frameworks, right? So the standards outside the organization, those standards, they apply to anybody and everybody if you fall within the parameters of that standard, right? So for example, PCI, they label it as a standard. And it applies to companies that accept, process, transmit, or store credit card or debit card information. So if you fall within that parameter, then you have no option, but you have to, adhere to that standard. Right. So, and it applies to everybody. It's the same standard that applies to any company that falls within that parameter. Now, if you don't fall within that, then you don't have to follow that. Right. So the standards that we are referring to here are external standards outside what your organization will normally come up with internally. Right. So at least we have that cleared. Now we go back to frameworks and standards, and all these are outside your governance, your internal cybersecurity governance structures. They are external. They still influence your internal, governance documentation and structures, right? But the frameworks and standards, they are external. Now, identify or differentiating between frameworks and standards, they are mostly academic exercise. In the industry, we are in the bad habit of referring to standards and frameworks as frameworks, right? So, but when technically they are not the same. And that is what we are going to be looking at here, right? So what is the main difference between framework, standards, regulations, controls, right? So this is not just, a big misunderstanding or confusion for career switchers or beginners, even for folks who've been in the industry for a while. They just call everything framework and they don't even know why they call it framework. They just use it and call it that. They've not even taken time to dig into why we call it that, right? So frameworks they are structured, like they are structured, or they are formal, structured set of guidelines that we follow to help us manage risks, right? Now, when you come to standards, and standard by definition, they are mandatory. Standards by definitions are mandatory. Frameworks in general, they are not necessarily mandatory. They kind of, okay, you can do this, you can do that, you can do that. All of that is going to help, but they are not necessarily mandatory, right? So, like, for example, your NIST cybersecurity framework, yes, it is a really good framework, but it's not really binding, unless, of course, maybe you're a government agency. Aside that, for other industries, yes, they all use it, but it's not really, set in stone. But if you take a standard like PCI, if you fall within, what PCI requires you to follow PCI, if you fall within that parameter, it's not, you can pick and choose some of it to use and others not to. You have to follow it, right? So when we talk about frameworks, we are looking at likes of CIS controls, CSA, NIST, AI, RMF. And now for some of the government agencies, most of the NIST, they are not, they are standards, they are frameworks, but their implementation kind of also mimic what you do for standard, right? Now, so frameworks, they are often flexible, and they are more, more on the lines of, okay, you can follow this to make your security posture or your security maturity stronger, right? But sometimes some organizations will require, and that is, a caveat to this. So let's just stick to the definitions first, and then we go into the different scenarios and use cases. Now, when you come to standards, like I said, standards are more mandatory. And there are specific expectations and specific requirements that you have to follow. And mostly with standards, that is where you get certified. So I think Chucks or whoever said that, yes, with standards, you actually get certified. And, because that is mandatory. You go through, there's a certification at the end of it, you get certified. Mostly for your frameworks, you use them to assess your security posture, your risks posture, and others, right? So that is the difference between the two. Now, why do we kind of interchange standards and frameworks? Really, it is about industry practice, but it's not really. I'm going to break it down and you understand why that is so. It is not necessarily just people would not knowing the difference between the two. Sometimes they don't know the difference between the two, but if you don't look at it from an academic or technical perspective like this, we just consider both the same, simply because of the operational side of standards. When the implementation of standards, makes it mimic the same exact things that we do for frameworks. That is why we kind of just put all of them together, right? So we also have regulations and laws. Now, these are standards that are enforceable by law. And I mean, regulations and laws. So example, HIPAA. HIPAA is a law in the United States. So if you work within the health space and you don't follow HIPAA, as a company, you can get in trouble. Your owners can get in trouble. They have like jail time up to even 5 years for owners of the company and stuff like that, right? GDPR for Europe, GLBA, SOX for the financial side, then other data privacy, rules like EU GDPR, and then also now for AI, the EU AI Act. All these are laws and regulations. So if for those ones, we will normally would have considered them to also be standards, but they're enforceable by law. right? And they are actual acts or laws that have been, enacted by different countries and different jurisdictions, right? So hopefully we are getting some headway here, right? Now we move into controls, what controls are, and we are going to come back to why frameworks and standards are a bit confusing, so we just call all of them frameworks. So for controls, they are safeguards that will help us to reduce risks within our organization. You can also call them requirements. Now PCI calls them requirements, but controls. And then also CIS controls call controls safeguards. So it's really funny to see this definition. But controls, they are measures we put in place to reduce risks, if you want to look at it that way. So for example, access review, doing multi-factor authentication, implementing multi-factor authentication, encryption, incident response testing, with third-party risks, security, awareness training, and all those are controls that we put in place. And these controls can be found on frameworks at the same time in standards, right? Now in frameworks, they are more flexible. Okay, make sure you have this and that in place. And, you can at least use that to make sure, you are doing everything right. But for standards, if you don't have it in place, you are going to fail your certification, right? Now, we are coming to the similarities between the standards and the frameworks in terms of implementation. That is what makes it, kind of similar. And that is where it kind of gets into a gray area. So why the industry refer to standards and regulations as frameworks? We've listed 5 reasons why we do that, right? So in the industry, we broadly call everything standards, regulations as frameworks. And reason why we do that is what are frameworks? So set of structured requirements or controls and testing expectations that organizations use to build, assess, manage their security and compliance program. Now, mostly when it comes to the implementation, so reason why people, normally casually will call PCI DSS, SOC 2, ISO 2701 and others as all frameworks is because of the implementation part of it, right? So, and we are going to look at we'll use PCI as an example. So for PCI, it is a standard. The name itself says it's a standard. PCI DSS. But when it comes to within your organization, so PCI gives a structured way for us to approach scoping, implementing controls, testing the controls, collecting evidence, right? And when we really look at this structure, it falls within the space of frameworks. Frameworks are what helps us to do that. So when it comes to the implementation of the operational side of PCI, which is a standard, it mimics exactly what we normally will do with the frameworks, right? So PCI was informally categorized as a framework, but really the onus of it even causes the standard, right? So, and then also for me, in terms of meaning and terminology, so for frameworks, broad structure of organizing your cybersecurity or risk management. So we have NIST cybersecurity framework and others. When it comes to standards itself, specific requirements organizations must meet or can certify or validate against, right? So your PCIs, your ISOs, and then regulations and laws, simply standards that are enforceable by law. So, and then your controls, they are what is really inside your frameworks and standards, and then your control framework or catalog, also a set of controls used for assessment or implementation, right? Now, when we come to the why we we kind of refer to regulations and standards as frameworks, we have 5 main reasons. So first, many of these standards, they contain a framework-like structure. And like I said, PCI, as an example, has requirements, and these requirements are called controls in other frameworks or standards. They have requirements, testing procedure, evidence, expectation, scoping rules, validation methods, and assessment processes. So the operational side of it is like a framework during, implementation. So to operate or to use this is a framework. It is now looking more of like the implementation of a framework, right? So the implement, and then also using this to do an assessment is simply how you use a framework. So the in terms of technical name is a standard, but the implementation of it looks more like a framework, right? Now, secondly, for GRC professionals, you are going to be working with a lot of control-driven activities. So day to day, you are looking at what controls apply to what evidence proves what. You are looking at gap analysis, doing remediation. Now, whether the source is a technical standard or framework or regulation, the work kind of feels the same because of the implementation is almost the same, right? The actual execution feels the same. So it is not surprising that we will call everything a framework because the implementation of everything is exactly like what we do for a framework, right? And then thirdly, organizations also will map. Organizations will do what we call mapping. They will map controls. So if the company or the organization, they are under obligation to follow PCI, ISO 2701 SOC 2, Net Cybersecurity Framework, CIS controls. Now, Net Cybersecurity Framework, CIS controls, they are typical frameworks. PCI, DSS, ISO, they are standards. But in your organization, if you have to follow all these, then you don't have to do twice or 3 times or 4 times the work. When you map them, once you do one assessment, you cover almost all 3 or all 4. So if you have mapped PCI to Net Cybersecurity Framework, I mean, they kind of almost look the same, right? In terms of the implementation of it or even using it to do an assessment. So we kind of treat all of it. And then also PCI tools also make it worse. They do the same thing. They will also have all these frameworks in one. And then, sometimes they've already done the mapping. So as you are doing it, you are filling in the blanks for the others, right? And then fourthly, the platforms, Archer, ServiceNow, GRC, Drada, Vanta, Audit Board, and the rest, they do the same thing that I just explained, right? So that makes it, it makes it hard to differentiate between what really is a standard and a framework. But here we are doing, a technical discussion. So at least you know the difference between the two. But if you say PCI is a framework, yes, we accept it as a framework, but at least technically, if we have to break it down, we know where to put it, right? Now, fifth, business language is less precise than audit language. So in conversations, framework is often the general umbrella under which we will put everything that we are going to use for audits, for policies, contracts, and others, right? So reason why we bundle everything together as framework. So hopefully this helps. Now, before we jump ahead, I'm going to answer the question from George. So how likely or how often are you going to, or do organizations use more than one standard or framework? Or now we can safely say frameworks, right? So George, typically you are going to have at least 2, 3, or 4, right? No one organization will have, in rare cases, you are going to have maybe just one framework that you're going to be working with. but most of the times it's going to be more than one. And reason being that for the ones that are, for example, if you work in the health industry, you have no option. That just by the fact that you work in the health industry, HIPAA is just, there. That is a low-hanging fruit, a framework that you have to follow. Now, if you accept credit card and debit card and you process or transmit them, then PCI is also going to get you. And then maybe if you work with an organization that requires you to have ISO certification, then that is also going to, so it can quickly pile up. And if your company is also into software development and others, then SOC 2 is also going to get you. Right now, for SOC 2, it's not mandated, but it has become kind of peer pressure. Most companies that are in the software industry, they subject themselves to SOC 2, right? Which also helps them to mitigate or to manage their security program and also risks as well, right? So yes, and then also going back to the question of, is a framework a software? The answer to that is a no. Framework is not a software. It's just pure PDF document that is stating, or that is giving you an outline of best practices or controls that your company has to follow, depending on where we will place it as a standard or as a framework, right? Or generally as a framework. So frameworks, they are simply a document that we have to follow, right? So either follow by law, or industry is, pushing us to follow, or we are just following that to make sure we are practicing good security, right? So frameworks are not software. Now, there are different softwares that you can use to help you in managing the different frameworks that you have within your organization or you have to follow, like Drada, Vanta, ServiceNow, Archer, and others. But these different types of software, they are not the frameworks. Frameworks are the actual document, a PDF, Excel spreadsheets that you are going to be using, right? Not a software. And also return on investment. There was a question about, we are using all these frameworks and wasting our time doing this. Do we even get anything out of it? Yes. So, and now this is like a great time to answer this question, because some standards or some frameworks are mandated by law. And those are the rules and regulations that we just looked at. If we classify all of them as frameworks, some are mandated by law. An example, the HIPAA, PCI is not mandated by law, but it's mandated by the industry. So if you don't follow that, then the industry owners are going to hold your feet to the fire. So for example, if you don't follow PCI and you have to follow PCI DSS, then the card brands and your bank, they are not going to allow you to accept card payments, right? And if you are not allowed to accept card payments, it's even worse than jail time, because you're not going to have any business to begin with, right? Now, and then there are others. So for return on investment, if your company fails to follow or fails to pass any of the assessment or audit for these mandatory frameworks, your business can be in serious trouble, right? Now, other return on investment, if your business or your company is not mandated to, or your business don't fall within the scope of the companies that have to follow certain types of mandatory frameworks, they still have to use at least one or two of these frameworks to ensure that they are following best practices, right? And best practices, is the fancy term of saying the bare minimum that you can do for security. We call them best practices. They are the bare minimum that you can do for security. So if your company is not following that, then you are a low-hanging fruit for hackers or for attackers, because they can easily, breach your network or breach your web application or whatever that you have going on within your organization. And that is going to be bad for business. So treating cybersecurity seriously and also treating your frameworks seriously in terms of staying in compliance with them, is going to give you a really big return on investment, right? Because if not, then you can get in trouble by law, also by industry, or attackers might be able to hop onto your network, and then you have to pay the big money, right? So hopefully this discussion has helped up to this point. Now we are going to look at the top 25 here shortly. So for career switchers, what do you need to really know about frameworks or standards? So what we started with was an academic discourse. Don't really get bogged down by, is this a framework or a standard? Or you can just call all of them frameworks, but now you know better. At least even when you say framework, there are real differences between them. But if you say framework, nobody's going to say you are wrong, right? So, but the key for beginners is to understand the different types of, or to know the different types of frameworks that are out there. Now, knowing a framework is not, you cannot memorize everything that is in a framework. Nobody in cybersecurity can recite the content of any framework like a poem, right? Now, even if you can do that, it doesn't really matter. Nobody cares, because every single time that you are using a framework, you have to go back to the documents, right? And the frameworks, they are updated. The owners of the framework, the organizations that, produces or that come up with these frameworks, they update it every 2 to 3 years, right? So, and reason why they do the update is when there are new best practices or new things that we are learning in the industry, they include it to make us more secure. Because like I said, everything that is in the framework, all the controls that you find on there or requirements, they are the bare minimum that you can do for security. So if you just pass your audit, don't be too happy, because you just met the bare minimum. But if you pass, then you really went above and beyond. You met all the controls, you superseded the controls, then yes, you can celebrate a little bit, but still, you still have to, work harder, right? Now, if you are beginning or you are new, understand the different types of frameworks, which ones are mandatory, which ones are not. And also you can dig into, okay, which ones are more of standards or frameworks. But regardless, we will simply, classify all of them as frameworks, but at least know them, know what they are used for. And you should be good to go, at least as a starting point, right? And we are going to be looking at what they are used for and all that. So we are going to look at our top frameworks for 2026 that employers expect you to know how to use or to have that exposure. Now, nobody in cybersecurity is a master of all the frameworks, because there are a lot of frameworks. Nobody expects you to be a master of all these frameworks. So don't waste your time just, mastering every single framework. And mastering a framework is not just reading the framework. That is not mastery. You are just familiarizing yourself with it, but actually using it, practicing with it, using it to conduct an assessment, using it to do something like we do in the GRC workshop and internship. That is how you are actually using or, using the framework, right? It's not just reading the framework. So with that, we are going to be looking at, we have the actual list. So we will jump out of here and go straight into the list. And before that, there was the first question. If the owner of the first question can repeat, okay, yes, I think I remember that one. How do you know which framework to use in your company? And I think we probably answered that. So, and it is big to know what framework your company has to use or you have to follow. It's just two things. One, your location, the industry your company is in, right? So, but per your industry, you are going to inherit one or two frameworks. So, for example, if your company is in the health industry, whether you are an insurance company, health insurance, a hospital, name it, where once you're in the health industry, then HIPAA, is your friend. HIPAA framework, you have no option but to follow, right? And then also your location. So the location of your company or the location of your customers will also determine which frameworks you have to follow. And also, if you do certain things, for example, you accept credit card, debit card, you process, transmit, or store directly by yourself, or even if a third party is doing it for you, then you have to stay in compliance with PCI DSS, right? So just these three. So what you do, or the industry you are in, and then your location. So where, how is your location going to influence which framework you have to follow? If you have customers in Europe or you have customers in California, there are some data privacy frameworks that you have to follow. Like in California, CCPA, in Europe is GDPR, right? So that is how you do that, assessment or analysis. Now, it can be that your company really don't fall within by your industry. Maybe your company sells shoes, so you are not in the health side. Also, maybe probably you are not accepting credit card and debit card, maybe for whatever reason, right? So in that case, then also you are maybe probably based in some state that has no data privacy requirement. So now you are free of all these standards or frameworks, but then you still have to choose one that is going to help you run your cybersecurity program for your company, right? And that you are at liberty to choose whichever, right? But you have to choose from the framework side of the house more than the standards, right? Because now you are not really under any obligation to choose whichever one. You can pick CIS controls, which is a good one, NIST cybersecurity framework, another good one, right? So mostly if you don't have to, for the ones that are mandatory, mostly if you don't have to follow them, you don't really touch them. You just go with the typical frameworks like NIST cybersecurity framework, CIS controls, and others, right? And then also ISO 27001, although you can get certified for that, it is not necessarily mandated by the industry or by law, but sometimes based on some contracts your company might be in, they might be required to have that to show that they are, practicing, following best security practices, right? So hopefully all these questions were answered. If I missed any question, you can kindly let me know. And if you have any additions or any, takes on these questions, you can also bring it up as well, right? All right, so now we are going to jump into our, Chucks, please go ahead.
Yeah, Doc, I think a question I wanted to ask you was, so I know like ISO 27001, like companies that usually will be looking for contracts, and most of the time the contracts are requiring them that they have to be certified. With that kind of scenario, would that mean that ISO 27001 will be a standard, or will it be a framework based on what you've described?
No, so originally ISO 27001, we classified that as a standard. Right. So that falls under the standards because you can get certified under ISO 27001. Now, if a company requires you to have that, that is fine. And any company can, if you want to do business with any company, they can ask for you to get certified ISO before they proceed. And that is a way for them as part of their third-party risk management. One of the ways that maybe internally within them, they've set as, a bar that you have to meet before they proceed with you, right? But typically ISO 27001 falls within the same boat as PCI, HIPAA, and others, right? So they are standards. All right, so this is going to be our top list. I think we have 15 in there. So top cybersecurity and GRC frameworks employers expect you to know in 2026. First on the list is NIST Cybersecurity Framework 2.0. So NIST Cybersecurity Framework, it has seen some improvements. It started with 1.0. Now we have 2.0. 2.0, the addition to it was the governance core function, which was something that should have been part of the original 1.0, but at least it's never too late, right, to make those corrections, because like I said, everything in cybersecurity starts with governance. So, and governance, you are looking at your policies, standards, procedures, because that is what sets the tone for everything that you're going to be doing, right? So this is best for the ISO 27701. It is really great when you are setting your cybersecurity program for a company from scratch, or even for what they have. You can use this to, fine tune it and make it better, right? So mainly a quick overview of this. We have the 6 core functions that is govern, identify, protect, detect, respond, recover. And in real life, on a GRC job, you are going to use this for cybersecurity maturity assessment, gap assessment, policy development, security roadmap planning, control mapping, cybersecurity strategy alignment, and all these. So it is really a handy framework for any GRC professional or cybersecurity professional. Now everything starts with, you can get this, and all the frameworks out there, almost all of them are free, right? You can simply download the PDF from the websites of the different organizations, with the exception of ISO. So ISO is not free. You have to buy the framework, right? So for each of this, each single framework that they have, you have to buy. I think the only free one from ISO is the 27,000, right? And that is kind of just an intro and a glossary of definitions and terms, right? But there are other ones you have to buy from their website. If you go to ISO's website, you can buy the different types of, you can at least start with ISO 2701 and maybe 2705 for risk management. So for the rest, most of the ones we are looking at, you can download them for free and go through, take a look at it and see, just, have a very good understanding of what this framework is about before you even jump into the use of it. Right now, during the GRC workshop and internship, our cohort, they get to work with ISO 2701, and they get to work with ISO 2701 and CIS controls version 8.1. Right now, the next in the list out of our top 25, out of our top frameworks is ISO 2701, and the latest version is the 2022. The version before this was 2013, right? So if you get a 2013, a place that has been replaced by the 2022. So if you want to purchase it, purchase the 2022, right? And this is also best for managing your information security systems. So information security management systems, right? And it will help with your policies, risk assessment, control implementation, and then also you can get certified with this as well. Now, some of the key things to look out for, it's key areas: leadership, commitment, risk management, risk treatment, corrective action, internal assessment, and then the Annex A controls. That is what you are actually assessed against. And one of the old standards out there, and it is really, some companies will require you to have this before they do business with you, and maybe sometimes some government agencies will also require you to have this certification as well. Now, the next is the NIST Special Publication 800-53. Now, in the government space, this is one of the biggest frameworks that you are going to encounter anywhere that you go, right? And this list that we're looking at is based on what employers are putting out there in terms of what they are looking for. So we didn't just come up with this list. So if you are looking at this list or you are here tonight, this is what employers are looking for. So if you are trying to break into the cybersecurity industry, it is, prudent that at least you familiarize yourself with these frameworks, at least know what they are used for, right? Even if you've not used them before. Right. So NIST Cybersecurity Framework, NIST 800 SP 853. Mostly this applies only to the government side. So any company that is a private entity that has to stay in compliance with this is working with the government in some shape or form. Right. But this strictly for all government agencies, they have to follow 800-53. And it is one of the good frameworks that has been there. They have 800-53 A and B that you can also look at. And I mean, we're not going to go too deep into that, but for even if you're a beginner, at least you can, for these frameworks, when you pick them, at least the first 2-3 pages will give you a background into, because it actually tells you who this is for, the audience, why it was made, right? So it gives you, like, it is going to give you that background, right? And then we move into CIS controls. Now, for CIS controls is also one of the popular frameworks out there. This also falls under the framework side of the house, more so than the standard side. CIS controls is from the Center of Internet Security. So like the name suggests, everything that they are pushing for is to ensure that you are safe in the cyberspace. So this also, it has 18 controls, and 18 controls and safeguards. So the safeguards are the actual sub-controls that you are going to be assessed against. And in real life, we use this for security baseline assessment, technical gap assessment, internal control review, policy development, also control maturity discussions. And for CIS and NIST cybersecurity framework, they actually help you to identify the maturity of your company security posture. So they have the implementation groups. NIST cybersecurity framework has the tiers, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, up to tier 4, right? And then they will move into their profiles as well, right? Now we move into SOC 2. So SOC 2 is also predominantly for your software as a service companies. So companies that are selling software, mostly this is their go-to framework. So, or this also traditionally will fall under standards because you get certified as well. So this is predominantly for companies that make software like Zoom. We are using Zoom. So Zoom, Drada, Vanta, other ServiceNow, all those companies, they have to subject themselves to SOC 2. Now, SOC 2 is not mandatory, but now mostly almost all SaaS companies subject themselves to. So if you don't, then you don't become competitive, because I'd rather work with a company that has subjected themselves to this for me to see that, yes, at least they are following best security practices than ones that have not subjected themselves to. Now, next, number 6 is PCI DSS. So PCI DSS, for any company that accepts credit card and process, transmit, or store credit card data that we will normally call account data, they have to stay in compliance with PCI DSS, right? And that is almost every company. So for PCI DSS, it is also a standard by name and also by practice, but by implementation, it becomes a framework, right? So it focuses on all areas of security within the organization. So if you fall within this space, and it's also one of the ones that is mandatory. So PCI, you have to, if you fall within that space, you process, transmit, or store credit card or debit card information, then you have to stay in compliance with PCI. So if you don't, you can get in trouble, you can get fined. HIPAA, same thing. So HIPAA is an act, is a law, it's a regulation in the United States, and HIPAA applies only to the United States. If you live or you operate outside the United States as a company, you don't have to follow HIPAA. But if you are a company in Europe and you have customers in the United States and you are providing any form of medical services to them, then guess what? You have to stay in compliance with HIPAA. Or you cannot function or operate in the United States. So you see how, when I said, how do you determine, to answer the question of how do you determine which frameworks you have to stay in compliance with? One, where are your customers located? And your company itself, where are you also located? Because where you're located might have some mandatory frameworks that you have to follow. And where your customers are based also have some that you have to follow, right? And then the industry you are in. If you're in the health industry, you are in an industry that requires you to have a certain type of framework, then yes. And then we move, so this is number 7, HIPAA. We move into number 8, GDPR and privacy frameworks. So for GDPR, if you are within the European Union space, or you have customers in Europe, then you have to stay in compliance with this. And this is also, this is data privacy, purely data privacy, that it falls under the standard space mostly than framework. Now, COBIT is also for, it's from ISACA, it's for IT governance, enterprise governance, and it's not mandatory, but it's also one of the good frameworks for governance and IT governance and enterprise governance, right? Also, for technically, you get certified for COBIT as well. So we will place that under standards that we know all of them fall under the break umbrella of, we will just term them as frameworks. Now, CSA cloud metrics. So for folks who've gone through our cloud security program, they are very familiar with this, and they've used this on a couple of occasions. Now, if you are here and you have no clue what this is the cloud security predominantly for cloud security. This is the framework that is used for cloud security assessment, right? Now, yes, if your company has to fall within, if you have to follow HIPAA, PCI, and others, yes, you do that. But if you want to check the security posture of your cloud environment, this is the framework, right? So this is the framework for you to use. So if you are not familiar with this, you can look it up, and it cuts across Azure, Google Cloud, and AWS. So, and if you go on their website, they have, and you also get certified, right? You also get certified. So we will bundle this under standards, right? And AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, they all have been certified. So you go there, they are on there, right? But your company, even if you are within AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, and you want to do an audit within your cloud environment to make sure your cloud is secure, this is the framework that you are going to be using. Now we jump into number 11. That is the NIST AI risk management framework. And then also, this is one of the frameworks that we use in our AI governance class. You are going to use this to conduct an audit. We've created a risk register out of this, and that is what we use for our risk assessment, AI governance, AI risk assessment. And this is a fairly new framework, kind of mimicking the traditional risks, the NIST RMF, but the focus is on AI risks management, right? And it has the traditional name of a framework, so it is a framework, right? Now we move into number 12. So for number 12, we are looking at ISO 4201. Now, ISO 4201, similar to 2701, is also not free. You have to pay for this. Now, this is for AI governance. It helps run your AI governance, AI management systems. So this is the go-to if you are looking for AI frameworks. This is one of the go-tos. So we have 12 instead of the 15. So this is our top frameworks. And these are frameworks that are the most listed frameworks cross-board on different job sites for GRC, cybersecurity jobs. When it comes to frameworks, this is what has been listed. So if you're looking to break into this industry, it is only prudent for you to familiarize yourself with these frameworks. Right. Now we are going to jump into some of the use cases because we are coming up on the hour. So we have to make this a bit faster. Okay. So any questions so far before we move on? All right. So we are going to be jumping into, so I think we've run through this. Okay, Abraham, please go ahead.
Yes, good evening, Doctor, and good evening to everyone. Are we supposed to master all these frameworks, and how do we be able to demonstrate proficiency in a situation where we apply for jobs that demand that we have a little bit of knowledge on all these frameworks?
Okay, so you can never master all these frameworks, right? So let me give you an example. Let's say you are working in a company and you have to stay in compliance with maybe ISO 20701 and HIPAA, right? And you work in the company for 10 years. You think you are going to be a master of PCI DSS? It's just those two frameworks that you'll be using over and over and over and over again for 10 years, right? So like I'm saying, nobody is a master of. It's not like your company will choose to use PCI next week and then no, we are going to use this the next day, right? So the goal here is to make sure you familiarize yourself with at least two or three, right? That is why during the internship and workshop, the GRC workshop and internship program, we work with three at least. And before we even start working with it, there is a session where your teams will familiarize yourself with it and come and do a presentation on these frameworks. And we do that intentionally to make sure you dig into the frameworks. You actually go and read through the frameworks. You try to make sense out of them before we actually use them to do an assessment, right? And then we show you how to do mapping as well. So now you spend at least almost three weeks plus, dealing with ISO 20701, cybersecurity framework, and CIS controls. So you have, a very good working experience with these frameworks, unlike somebody else who just pick the framework. And these frameworks, sometimes they're a bit dry and boring to read through them. So if you're not really using it for anything, you can read maybe the background to the framework, but when you come to the controls and the implementation of it, you are just reading it like you are reading it. That's about it. But if you're actually using it, then you are forced to dig into it because you might be asking for evidence, you might be asking for other things, right? So familiarize yourself or use two or three, right? And for the rest, they're all going to fall in place. If you run into any company and you are using any other frameworks, it's very easy for you to transition into other frameworks if you are very much well vested in using maybe one or two, right? But if you've never used the framework before, then it becomes totally new to you, right? So you cannot master all of it, at least master two or three. Even if you master one, it is okay. You will be, at least starting off, you will be able to function. But not knowing how to use any of it can be a bit problematic, right? So hopefully that helps.
That helps, but sometimes you're applying for a job and it demands knowledge, basic knowledge in CMMC and DFARS, where some frameworks you have no knowledge about. I don't know how you're able to.
So even on those jobs, and for Eretmis students who are here and are currently working, I think it was yesterday, or I think during our PCI class, I was having a chat with Matthew, and Matthew was saying, well, Dr. Edu, what was in the job description is not exactly what I'm doing, right? And that is the same for almost everybody on here who is working. Now, and we even did a session, a cyber chat session where we brought, I think it was Michael, Bettina, and somebody else, and we pulled up their job descriptions when they were actually applied to the job. And then we went through and we're asking them, are you doing these things on there? And, I think it was probably almost all of them were not doing exactly the same things on there. Right. Now, the point I'm trying to make is when you see job descriptions, they might probably list like 10 frameworks on there. You should know this, and all of that will be on one line. You should be familiar with CMMC, HIPAA, PCI, blah, blah, blah. That doesn't mean that is just one line. On the job, you are not going to be using all those frameworks, right? But mostly job descriptions are copy and paste. So your HR will copy and paste from somebody else, and they don't even know these frameworks and what they are used for. So, okay, this was a cybersecurity analyst role that somebody posted. I can copy that and change and put my company's name and stuff because I also have to post one for my company, right? So mostly, don't get carried away by job descriptions necessarily when it comes to frameworks. At least be very confident in the two or three that you know. Now, the way around frameworks is, and there's no interview that you're going to go to Unless, of course, maybe they have 2 frameworks on there or 3, and they ask you, have you worked with CIS controls before? And you are like, no. What about your experience with NIST cybersecurity framework? Oh, I've never heard of that. At that point, they are not going to move you forward, even if they like you, right? But if they ask you, have you worked with maybe CMMC? You should, because that was on the job description before you came to the interview. It's not like a trick question. You've never worked with CMMC, but at least you've worked with NIST cybersecurity framework. You've worked with ISO 20701. So you always start from the ones that you are familiar with. So have you worked with CMMC? You don't necessarily have to say yes or no. We can start with how you use ISO and NIST cybersecurity framework, and then what CMMC is used for. So although you wouldn't say you are an expert in CMMC, but the skills that you've acquired through you using ISO and 20701 will help you, or you can easily transition, that into working with CMMC. So you wouldn't say you're an expert in CMMC, but then, you'll be able to manage and find your way around, and you're a fast learner, right? That is how you go about, answering questions like that. So, like I said, you are not going to know all frameworks. Be very confident in the 1 or 2 that you know, especially, and a very good example of this is also with tools. You're not going to know all the tools in cybersecurity. Every day there are new tools coming up. So if you want to chase tools, you are going to go down a rabbit hole. But at least if you know how to use 1 or 2 tools, be confident in that. If they ask you, do you know how to use Splunk? You don't know how to use Splunk, but you've used RSA Archer, or you don't know RSA Archer, but you've used Splunk. They are all same tools, right? Oh, I've used maybe Splunk to do this and that and that and that. For Archer, I wouldn't say I'm an expert, but I'll be able to, find my way around. And I know this type of Archer you are using mostly is for these use cases. And you can use it to do A, B, C, and D, right? So you see how you start off with, what you are very strong on, and then you pivot into, but you just don't go with yes or no. And don't talk yourself out of job descriptions because you don't know all the frameworks that they've listed. Mostly for the interviews, they want to pick your brain on your working knowledge on these frameworks. So if you've mastered 1 or 2, you are in a better position, and you should be able to speak intelligently about the other ones that are on there. And speaking intelligently about it is you do your research and you find out, okay, CMMC, what is it about? What do we use it for? Different use cases. What are some of the problems and issues? If you are using this as an implementer, what can you run into? You polish up and you learn about that. And you add that to what you know already. And no company is going to say, well, we think you can do the job, but because you don't know CMMC, unless of course CMMC is the job. The job is a CMMC compliance manager. Then for that job, you don't even have to waste your time and apply to it if you don't know CMMC that well, right? But if it's a GRC analyst role, right, cybersecurity analyst role, and the CMMC is one of the many frameworks they've listed, don't let that, prevent you from applying or even going to an interview. Hopefully this helps everybody else. All right, so we are moving on. Now our GRC and cyber interview arena, we do this every Thursday night. We practice interviews. And we give you real feedback from our judges. And then for folks who, if you are here for the first time, or if you are looking to break into the cybersecurity space, the best program that is going to help you become a full-blown cybersecurity professional within the shortest possible time, which is about 4.5 months, is our cybersecurity entry-level course. So the entry-level course, first portion takes you through a foundation in cybersecurity, covering all areas of cybersecurity. And the second portion is our GRC workshop and internship, which will help you to practice and work on different real-world cybersecurity projects. So you are going onto the job with experience, not just with book knowledge, because that is not going to cut it. Employers are looking for what you can do, not just knowledge. And then also for our cloud security professional course for anyone already in the cybersecurity space, or if you've been in IT for a while, you want to pivot into the security space, and you want to focus on the cloud. This is the right program for you. We do all the three major cloud environments: AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, and then also for our AI governance. This program is for everybody because AI is here to stay. If you want to break into the GRC space, become the GRC professional that you are supposed to be. Now they are quickly going to tag AI governance to your plate. So it is only prudent that you stay ahead of this. So if you have done some training in the past, you're already in the cybersecurity space, it is good to make sure you're adding this to your toolbox, right? And then for arguably the most lucrative niche in the cybersecurity space, our payment security and compliance program. And this is going to make you master in the PCI DSS framework, and you'll be able to manage the PCI program for companies, right? Now, how the frameworks are used in real world. So we are going to look at the different use cases for these frameworks that we just discussed. So a framework is not just simply an academic concept or just for intellectual discussions. We use them in day-to-day operations in cybersecurity and in GRC. Now, they help organizations to define the following. So who owns cybersecurity within the organization, who approves policies, the reporting chain, who manages expectations, how or who accepts risks, who will review performance, track remediation, monitor third party, and others. So first, governance. Like I said, governance does everything, but governance is influenced by frameworks coming from outside the organization, right? So we have our internal governance structure, that is your policy standard procedure, your policy standard procedures, your guidelines, your baseline, but then all that is influenced by standards coming from the outside. And a very typical example, if your company has to stay in compliance with HIPAA is going to influence the controls, and HIPAA will influence the standard that you're going to have within your organization. First, it will influence the policies, which will, move down into your standards, into your procedures, right? If you have to stay in compliance with PCI, same thing. So before you even start your governance structures, you have to first identify which frameworks you have to stay in compliance with by virtue of your location, your customer's location, the industry you are in, right? And, some things that you do, such as if you accept credit card and debit card payments within your organization, right? Now, the next is risk management. So frameworks or standards, they help us with risk management. So within the organization, it will help us to identify the different, or based on these frameworks, we are forced to have an inventory of our assets, right? And then also we are able to identify what type of vulnerabilities and threats that exist. Also, we are able to look at the business impact controls that will help us reduce risks, residual risks that will remain after we put in place controls, remediation strategies, who owns the risks, and how often we're going to do risk review and others, right? Now, the next one is compliance. So these frameworks, they help us when it comes to compliance. So compliance teams, they will use this to prep for their external audits or assessments that are coming up. So for example, for PCI, HIPAA, and other SOC 2, whether they are mandatory or we are forced by the industry to do it, these frameworks are what we are going to be using, and they help us with the evidence collection, with control testing, policy review, audit prep, and also remediation follow-up, right? So they help us to internally prep for these external audit or assessments. And then D, audits. So compliance and audits. So auditors who are coming to audit us, they will use these frameworks to do the audit. So they will be looking at, or to test, they will test our risk assessment, policies, awareness training. So all the things that we are supposed to do within the framework, the auditors are obviously going to use the same framework to do the testing as well. And then we look at third-party risk management. So for everything that we do in third-party, it's also influenced by these frameworks. So even all the way from your third-party questionnaire, how do you come up with a third-party questionnaire? It's influenced by the frameworks, because the frameworks are influencing everything that we do within the organization, right? So, and then also for the vendors, as part of the assessment that we do for third-party, we look at their compliance reports, right? That also helps us to assess them during our third-party risk assessment as well. And then policy development. So, like I said from the beginning, everything starts with governance, but then the internal governance structures are influenced by frameworks from the outside. So policies are often built from frameworks. And for example, if you have to stay in compliance with PCI DSS, and PCI says that your minimum password, a control in PCI says your minimum password length should be maybe 8 characters. You cannot have a policy, internal policy within the organization that says that your minimum password should be 5 characters. Then that means that you are going to fail your PCI assessment or your PCI audit, right? So before we come up with our own internal password policy for the company, we have to look at what PCI is saying first, and that is going to influence what we're also going to put in there. So if PCI is saying the minimum should be 8, we can choose to say we want, so 8 is the minimum, but we want to do better than the minimum. So we will make our minimum maybe 10, right? So that means that we are even making it stronger than 8, right? So hopefully that helps. So policy development key, and then also control testing. So control testing, one of the most important things GRC folks will do, or even in cybersecurity in general. And these frameworks, they help us with control testing. Some of the frameworks like PCI and others, they actually, tell you exactly what to test for, right? And CSA control metrics also tells you for the cloud, also tells you what exactly to test for, right? So they have some testing guidelines for you to follow. Now, it'll help you in terms of checking whether our users are reviewed, and these are the different controls that you are going to be looking at. But it actually will let you know, hey, these are, this is what to test for, right? So these are the benefits or the different use cases for these frameworks. So it's not just for compliance. Yes, everything that we've listed and even more, these frameworks will help us to do. So what employers expect from entry-level or intermediate-level cybersecurity professionals. So if you're entry-level, employers do not expect you to be framework experts. So to be an expert in all these frameworks, but they do expect you to have a basic understanding of, especially if you are new, a basic understanding of frameworks, right? So you should know what frameworks are, why they matter, the difference between the different types of frameworks, security controls, basic security controls, how risk assessment works, what evidence means, control testing, what that means, how policies connect to controls, how audit works, and how to explain frameworks in simple business language, right? So this is what employers are looking for, somebody who is entry level. Now, if you are mid-level, employers are also, they expect you to at least know a framework or two, right? So, and you should be able to apply a framework. So if you've not really used a framework to do anything, then obviously you can't apply a framework. If you've not even worked on something like, working on policies and others, not even talking about using the framework itself to conduct an audit or an assessment, then you don't even know how to apply these frameworks, right? In the entry level, the GRC workshop and internship takes care of all these. So if you're intermediate level and you lack that hands-on when it comes to even frameworks, then you should jump into this. So as a mid-level candidate, you should be able to do gap assessments, to perform gap assessments. And that is one of the key projects that we do. The soft pool for the folks in the internship and workshop, the soft pool that we do, you are literally doing gap assessments. Now we do map control, so across different frameworks. So mapping is also one of the things that we do on there, collecting evidence and validating evidence, creating risk register, supporting remediation plan, prepping for prepare management reports, respond to vendor questionnaires, develop policies, procedures. So this is for mid-level, right? And that is why everybody in the GRC workshop and internship, by the time you are done, you are no more entry level. So don't be too happy and still classify yourself as entry level. You are not. You are here and even above mid-level because you've done way too much. Everything on here you can do easily, right? Now, how frameworks connect to how we can connect these frameworks to cybersecurity and GRC rules, right? So for GRC analysts, what you need to know in terms of frameworks, this cybersecurity framework, ISO 27701, SOC 2, PCI DSS, CIS controls, risk management, policy management, control, and this is a summary of looking at this straightly from the point of view of frameworks, right? Now, your daily work might include audit, risk assessment, compliance tracking, control testing, and this is strictly looking at it from the perspective of this is by no means all that you are going to do for GRC analysts. You do more, but at least you need to understand the following, right? Now, if you're a risk analyst, you need to understand the cybersecurity framework, ISO 27701, NIST cybersecurity, COBIT, NIST AI, RMF, enterprise risk concepts, and your daily work might include risk assessment, risk register, likelihood and impact analysis, risk treatment. And for folks also in the GRC workshop and internship, risk assessment is one of the big projects that we do. And then also third-party risk assessment is one of the big ones that we do. And you're actually going to do these in real time, right? Now, if you're a compliance analyst, you need to understand SOC 2, ISO, PCI, HIPAA, GDPR, and this is what Abraham was referring to. If you see this list, it shouldn't scare you. Maybe all you know is we probably have worked with ISO. And all of these you've not worked with, it shouldn't put you in a panic mode. Just find out what ISO is used for. What are the core components of ISO, of SOC 2, right? Also, same thing with PCI. Find out, okay, PCI applies to, when will PCI apply to a company? HIPAA, when will it apply to a company? What are the key components of HIPAA, right? Because during interviews, employers don't expect you to be a master of all these frameworks, and nobody is, right? So you are really trying to grade yourself, and simply, sometimes, mostly because because you're not in the industry and you don't know what you don't know. So you think if you see everything on the job description, it means you have to know all of it and you have to be a master of all of it. No, it doesn't work that way. But then you say, but why did they put all of it there too? So they are looking for, this is the list of things they are looking for. So somebody who is close. And sometimes when you go to interviews is when you realize most of the things on the job description, they are not even looking for, right? And like I said, the job description is from HR and mostly they do copy and paste. That I can assure you, right? So we move into IT auditor. You need to know COBIT, ISO, NIST, Special Publication 853. And this is if you're on the government side, ISO, CIS controls, and a list of other things, incident response, change management and all that you're also going to be involved in. Testing controls, documentation finding, documenting findings, reporting audit results, and others. If you're AI governance professional, obviously all the AI frameworks, so AI, RMF 42001, privacy frameworks, data privacy frameworks, also a big one. And you might be conducting AI risk assessment, policy development, model governance, and others, AI compliance readiness. Now, how to speak confidently about these frameworks during interviews. So best way to talk, and this is what Abraham brought up, best way to talk about these frameworks is to avoid sounding like you've memorized these frameworks and what they mean and what they stand for. right? Employers want to know, or they want to hear how you understand the frameworks and the different use cases. How do we use this in real life? Not definitions or anything like that, right? So yes, know what the framework is, who made them, the intent behind these frameworks, what are they used for, right? On in real life, how do we use this on daily basis? That is what they are looking for, right? So if you've used at least one or two or three, it's easier for you to speak to these frameworks. But going to interviews, don't try to, or don't sound like you are just memorize, some of these frameworks, you know them by name, and you can't even tell exactly what they are used for or the different use cases. That is not going to make you look good. And then we are going to look at some of the common mistakes beginners make with frameworks. So one, trying to memorize everything on a framework is a big no-no. It's not practical. Nobody expects you to be able to recite things on frameworks. And two, second mistake is not understanding controls. So not understanding the controls on the frameworks. So employers, they care more about the controls and how the controls can be tested and how we can put remediation strategies in place to correct gaps identified than just, having a list of the controls, right? So not connecting frameworks to job tags. So do not say, I know NIST, but you can talk about how you use NIST, right? And then four, confusing frameworks and regulations. So NIST cybersecurity framework is not a law. ISO 20701 is a certifiable standard. HIPAA and GDPR are legal regulatory obligations. PCI DSS is an industry standard for any company that accepts card payments. SOC 2 is attestation report for AICPA trust service criteria, right? So knowing where they fit, and that is what we did today. At least going through this, you start the conversation, right? So whether you are new or you're already in the industry, everybody, was able to gain something tonight. And I can tell you that for a fact. Now, another mistake, ignoring cloud and AI governance. This is always going to come back and, chase you around. So you don't have to. In 2026, you don't have the luxury of, forgetting about AI governance and also ignoring the cloud, right? And on that note, I think we are about to wrap up. If there are any questions for the group, you can kindly bring it up, and hopefully everybody gains something new for their toolbox. So somebody was asking, can the PDF, Evans was asking if the PDF can be posted, and I think there is some info also in here. Any questions on the presentation that we went through? And hopefully all the questions about and the myth about frameworks has been addressed. Right. Any takes on what we went through? Harold, please go ahead. You are muted if you're trying to speak.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. Enjoyed the presentation very much today. In your last slide, the last point, where you indicated that we shouldn't overlook AI governance and stuff. I know that is a major subject discipline. I want to understand the relationship. Is it the case that as a GRC analyst, you must necessarily do that course to have it alongside with you as a handbag, or is it an aspect of it, a little bit of it that you need to learn? And how do we capture that? And please give me much more deeper understanding of it, so that in future you won't think that, yes, I have dressed up, I'm wearing suit, but not knowing you perhaps not wearing socks in your shoe, and that could expose you one way or the other. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. So, tonight we're discussing frameworks for the most part. Now, when we say in the context of what we're discussing tonight, when we say don't forget about AI and the cloud, it's not for you to become a full-blown AI governance professional, but at least what frameworks cover AI governance? And we mentioned that. That was ISO 4201, right? Now, what frameworks cover, like what framework covers cloud security? We looked at the CSA metrics, right? So these, you can familiarize yourself with those frameworks. That is not necessarily going to make you a subject matter expert in cloud security or in AI governance, but at least during interviews, if your potential employer is asking you, Harold, so what is your take on this, AI and AI governance things that are going on? Probably he or she doesn't really know for a fact, but they just want to see how proactive you are when it comes to, staying up to date with what is going on in the industry, right? And if you've had the chance of maybe reading through ISO 4201 for AI governance, at least you have some key pointers, and key things to talk about. Oh, yeah, 4201 is what covers AI governance and it is for this, blah, 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 right? At least that shows that you are somebody who is continuously learning, and that will give you some upper hand than your other colleagues who are going into this interview and they were just going to pull a blank on this and they can't really say anything concrete, right? So this is not to mean that you have to, come and do the cloud security before you can go to an interview and talk about cloud, or you have to do AI governance before. But at least in the context of what we're doing, we're looking at frameworks. So if they ask you about any of these frameworks, you should be able to speak intelligently about, right? And this is to start a conversation for everybody on here tonight. Take your time. You can go back and replay the video. And for these frameworks, write them down, chase them around. The ones that are free, download them, just familiarize yourself with it. So at least mostly during interviews is for you to be able to speak intelligently about, the list. So if there's a list of 10 and you know one really well, that is all you need. The rest you should be able to speak intelligently about it. Because the last thing you want to do during an interview is that you had the job description, right, for weeks before they gave you an interview date. You come to the interview and they ask you about what is your take on COVID, right? And it was on there, and you are pulling a blank and talking about, well, I've not really used it before, so really, what is not like what is going to get you is not you not using it, but what is going to get you is that you've just proven that you are not somebody who is proactive, right? You wait for instructions and you didn't really prepare well for this interview. That is what is going to, give you some, bad press. It's not because you don't know it, right? Because if you don't know it, you could have easily just, went online and found out for yourself what this framework is about or what this is even like, what it even means, and dig more into it. And then now during the interview, you can personalize it and talk more about it and talk what they mostly for the things you don't know, you should be able to speak intelligently about it. Not just say, well, I mean, I've never used it. So that is not you being truthful, is you being lazy. Nobody is saying go and claim that, yes, I've been using CMMC since I was a baby. That is not what we are telling you to do. But they expect you to come in there. You've never used CMMC. Yes, I get it. But what do you know about it? Right. So you can say, I know ISO, I know CIS controls, I've used them. CMMC, I wouldn't say I'm an expert, but I know these are the use cases, and this is the different, scenarios within which we can use it and use it for this and use it for that. Then they know you are proactive. You took time to prepare for the interview. You didn't take them for granted, right? But you don't show up and say, well, I've never used that. And you think you are being honest or truthful. No, you are being lazy. And nobody's going to give you a role. Because that is the same attitude that you're going to be bringing onto the work. So during interviews, they are not just, rating you or grading you based on your technical aptitude. They are rating you and grading you based on your soft skills as well. And this is a key part of your soft skill: attention to detail and being proactive, right? Taking charge, working independently without somebody telling you what to do. And if you don't prove all that during interviews, they are not going to directly ask you questions like that. Do you pay attention to detail? Of course, everybody is going to say yes. But it's how you carry yourself during the interview, even how you prepared for the interview is going to show whether you pay attention to detail or not. Right. So hopefully that helped. Justin, please go ahead.
Good evening, Doc. And my question is, which framework do you teach in the GRC internship?
Oh, so we use ISO 20101, NIST Cybersecurity Framework, and CIS controls. We don't just teach that; we use that to do assessments, right? And then when we do risk assessments, we use the risk assessment version of CIS controls, which is the CIS RAM. Is what we use for our risk register.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. All right, everyone. I think if there are no more questions in here, I think there are some shout outs in the chat, but then we are about to wrap up. Abdul Latif, please go ahead.
Yeah, Doc, thanks for your presentation. I wanted to ask about those who joined on the entry level some time ago. I think we received an email for a group for us to join in the group. And then we affirm it, but for me, I've not seen anything else again. We receive an email after we're done with our self plays.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then
Absolutely.
you are ready for the GRC workshop and internship. So you can shoot an email or put it in the WhatsApp chat, and we are going to take care of that and add you to the group.
Okay.
Yes. All right, everyone. So if you are looking to get more information on any of the our contacts and stuff, you simply go to Eretmis Academy, and there's a link for you to make an appointment. There's phone numbers there and stuff that you can, always use to reach out to us, right? Candice, please go ahead.
So I have a question. So for someone that's becoming like entry level for the GRC field, which framework do you think is most important for us to learn?
So for baby steps, I will start with CIS controls and a cybersecurity framework.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. All right. Any more framework questions before we wrap up for tonight? And I appreciate everybody's time. Next week we're gonna be on same time, 7 p.m. Eastern. Hopefully you finish before 9, right? But every Friday we can assure you have something for your toolbox, something new for your toolbox. So have a great and wonderful rest of the evening, and enjoy your weekend. We are going to meet same time next week. And for our GRC workshop and
Doug, a
internship
quick
folks,
question, please.
Yes, go ahead.
I want to know the internship. What is the schedule like? Is it only on weekends or some parts of the week? And how is it? How is the structure and details going?
Okay. So we meet. Our Saturday meetings are to introduce the projects, and the projects you and your team will work on the project during the week, right? So the teams will predetermine their meeting times. Once we put you in groups, you are all going to meet and come up with your meeting times. So once we do the discussions on the Saturdays, we show you how the project is done. During the week, you and your teams will meet and start working on the projects, right? And then once it's done, you do a presentation on it. We give you feedback, and then we move on to the next project. Justin, is your hand up?
So
from
when you are in the internship, do they after when the classes are done, do they resend you the whatever you guys do the day, or like in the audios and videos, stuff like that?
Oh yeah. Like the videos, they are all recorded and posted, so you'll be able to get your hands on it. Yes.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. Abdul Latif, please go ahead.
Doug, please, I heard something about RMF. How is it like
with GRC. Some, we are some of us
AI,
are
RMF,
new.
or
Yeah,
the traditional RMF?
I think yeah, traditional RMF. I just saw it though. I don't know whether it's the same as GRC or so.
No, the RMF is simply is one of the compliance, is one of the frameworks under in cybersecurity and under GRC, right? It's a
Oh, okay.
risk management framework. So it speaks to how we manage risks within the organization, but it's this RMF, and mostly it applies to the government agencies and state agencies, right? But then the corporate side can also borrow from it. But when it is mandated for the government agencies and state agencies, for other organizations outside that space, they don't really have to follow that, right? So it's a standard in that regard, but for other companies outside the government space, it might be a framework. But we consider all of them as, and for this, the name actually is framework for this risk management framework, right? Yeah, so we can discuss that more when you get into the internship and workshop. We are going to talk about more about the when we do the risks. We will do more about the risk assessments and risk frameworks.
All right.
All right, everyone. Appreciate everybody's time. Have a great and wonderful rest of the evening. And we'll meet same time next week for another exciting edition of Cyber Chat.